With the final editions of recruiting rankings for the class of 2025, Tennessee has another 5-star. Who is that 5-star, and how many 5-stars has Josh Heupel recruited to Tennessee during his tenure? All that and more, a little recruiting talk here on a Friday, Locked On Vols.
You are Locked On Vols, your daily podcast on the Tennessee Volunteers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, good Friday morning, everybody. Welcome into Locked On Vols. I am your host, Eric Cain. So glad to have you guys along for the ride. Make a Locked On Vols your first listen, your first watch each and every single morning. Everydayers couldn't do the show without you guys. You know where it is, free and available wherever you get your podcast. All right, today's episode is brought to you in part by our friends over at Game Time. You can download the Game Time app, create an account, put in the promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. What time is it? It is game time. On today's show, we're going to talk a little recruiting, where Tennessee finished in the final on-3 rankings for the class of 2025, and who is that newly minted 5-star in the class. All that and more coming up in segment number 1. Plus, other 5-stars of the Josh Heupel era. Will Tennessee have the best special teams in the country in 2025? Let me rephrase this. Tennessee should have a top 3 special teams unit in the country in 2025. That's coming up in segment number 2. And then what's the keys for Tennessee to get some revenge against Florida and, more importantly, bounce back into the win column for another home game this weekend at Thompson Bowling Arena at the Food City Center? All that and more right now on a Friday show. All right, so Tennessee finishes the class of 2025 recruiting rankings. The on-3 rankings ranked number 10 in the country and number 7 in the Southeastern Conference. Again, there's different renditions of recruiting rankings all the way back to their junior years and then over the new year and the summer and after the senior season bump. And the same's for On3, 247, ESPN, and Rivals.com. All these recruiting sites have done their final bumps, their final rankings for the class of 2025. And because of that, the On3 industry rankings, the weighted average and all that, Tennessee comes out at number 10, according to On3. Tennessee also has a newly minted 5-star prospect in the class, according to the On3 industry rankings, and that is Isaiah Campbell. Isaiah Campbell, 6'3", 265 pounds, Durham, North Carolina is where he lives, where he goes to high school. He was a top 40-ish prospect throughout the entire cycle. On3 gave him a bump up to number 30 nationally, and now that's kind of where he is, number 31 according to the On3 industry rankings. The 31st prospect in the country, a newly minted 5-star, 4th best player at the defensive line in his class, and the 2nd-ranked player out of the state of North Carolina. Isaiah Campbell is going to be really interesting for me because as we looked into the position rooms heading into spring practice, we've done that series. We're going to end it today with special teams. You kind of get to that strong side defensive end, and there's a whole lot of options there. Dominic Bailey's coming back. He's going to be your starter. Tyree West is there. He's been a veteran. He's been a guy that's played a whole lot of football for you. He's going to be in the rotation. Then you kind of have a grouping of Tyree Weathersby, Kellen Lindstrom, and Carson Gentle. Lindstrom, haven't heard a whole lot about him. Carson Gentle redshirted last year, but Rodney Gardner and the defensive staff really, really like him. They think he's a player. And then you have Tyree Weathersby, who didn't play an awful lot last year, was on track to be in the rotation in 2023, but a hip injury sidelined his entire true freshman season that he suffered in fall camp. So he's kind of been a forgotten man as well. I'm intrigued to see if he can bounce back and if he can, kind of step up and be the player that they thought he would. But also it's a very crowded position. Then you throw into the fact that you're adding some guys. Charles House is a defensive lineman interior. Ethan Utley's an interior defensive lineman. But you have Isaiah Campbell. You have let's see who else. You have Isaiah Campbell, you have Marion Dye, and you have Jaden Lofton. And all those guys are considered quote-unquote strong side defensive ends, and they all kind of fit the bill there. A couple of those guys will redshirt, I'm sure, but what's this position look like down the road? It's numbers-wise, and talent-wise, you like it a lot because Dominic Bailey is entering his last year of eligibility. Tyree West is entering his last year of eligibility. But for the sake of the 2025 season, could one or two of those guys slide down and play defensive tackle to kind of help with the numbers? Because, again, you lost Amari Thomas, Omar Norman-Lott, Elijah Simmons. You bring back Bryson Eason, which is huge, Jackson Moy, David Hobbs. Those are your 3 guys who have played, who have been in the rotation. Jamal Wallace is going to have to step up. Where's Nathan Robinson? And then again, Ethan Utley, how quickly can he get up to speed? Charles House, are you in the picture? Could somebody slide down in there to give them some depth outside of just Rabbit's package, which is the pass rushing down and distance package? So I'm intrigued to kind of see how that sorts itself out over fall camp and of course spring practice coming up in a couple of weeks. But anyway, you have this strong side defensive end spot, and it's really, really talented for Tennessee, and Isaiah Campbell, a newly minted 5-star, is kind of leading that bunch. And I'm really, really high on Marion Dye as well. I think he's going to be a really, really good player. Isaiah Campbell had a fantastic senior season, a big reason why he got such a bump in the rankings. 90 tackles, 24 TFLs, 12 sacks as a senior this past year. Charles House, who is the talent evaluator, director of scouting and recruiting for On3, gave a really, really nice review of Isaiah Campbell when he committed. You remember, he decommitted for Clemson. A couple months later, committed to Tennessee. At the time of his commitment, this is what Charles House said on Isaiah Campbell. Quote, Isaiah Campbell is one of the most athletic defensive linemen in the 2025 cycle. He just has outstanding speed, twitch, first step quickness. You can see it show up on Friday nights with consistency. He's one of the top interior pass rushers in the cycle. He makes a ton of plays behind the line of scrimmage, moves at a different speed than a lot of top defensive line prospects. He has good length and good frame. I think he's has a frame to add a bunch more weight once he gets to Tennessee in the strength and conditioning program. I think where he ends up from a size perspective might dictate how he will be used potentially. I think he is likely a best fit as a pass rushing 3 technique and can create a lot of mismatches on passing downs and uses speed and quickness to shoot gaps and make plays beyond the line of scrimmage. I think the effort level is outstanding. You see him consistently show up and make plays. I think the physicality is there as well. A good bit of versatility. Could even see a scenario where he plays as a defensive end at times. Big recruiting win for Tennessee, a guy that we have been high on this entire cycle and has been inside the top 50 the entire time. So that was Charles Powers at the time of his commitment to Tennessee. And again, at 6'3", 265, he doesn't have the weight to play defensive tackle right now. But once he gets to campus, maybe he's the guy that can slide down. Maybe how much weight do they put on him here in the spring months? Do they go ahead and put him at a 3 tech or a 5 tech or a 4-eye and interior presence early on and see if he can kind of grow into that? I think at least one of these bodies at strong side defensive end is going to have to slide down and help Tennessee in the interior. Maybe that's Isaiah Campbell. But nonetheless, he's a player, and he's going to be a player for Tennessee, and he is the next 5-star for the University of Tennessee. So it kind of got me thinking, again, these are the On3 industry rankings, which weighs On3 and 247 at the highest. Rivals.com, I believe, has like 20%, and then I think ESPN's at like 10%, but it's a weighted distribution of the 4 recruiting sites. And during the Josh Heupel tenure, here are the 5-star prospects that have signed with Tennessee per the On3 industry rankings. Two in these first 2 classes I'm going to mention. 2025, David Sanders, of course, and now Isaiah Campbell. 2024, Jordan Ross and Mike Matthews. Jordan Ross needs to take a big step this year, so does Mike Matthews. 2023, just one, it was Nico Iamaleava. However, David Hobbs was considered a 5-star according to On3 and On3 alone. In 2022, Josh Heupel's first recruiting cycle, but technically that was Jeremy Pruitt's, did not have he had to start over, essentially, is what I'm trying to say, but did not have a consensus 5-star, or not an On3 industry ranking 5-star. But James Pierce was considered a 5-star by On3, and boy, did Charles Powers knock that one out of the park for sure. So that's kind of a look at the 5-stars during the Josh Heupel era, what that looks like, and Isaiah Campbell's a newly minted one, and I'll be intrigued to kind of see what his path is here at Tennessee, as he's going to be an early enrollee. How much weight can they put on him? Where were they going to have him at spring practice? He's going to be a player, and there's going to be opportunities on that defensive line for sure. Isaiah Campbell, the newest Tennessee 5-star, according to the On3 rankings. Hey, when we come back, how can Tennessee be one of the best special teams units in all of college football in 2025? I'm going to tell you, returning a lot of production, plus one of the most elusive returners in all of college football. That and so much more as we continue on here, our Friday morning edition of Locked On Vols. Stay tuned. I want to tell you guys about my friends over at Game Time. Attending NFL playoff games is an experience like no other. The environment, the excitement, the connection with the other fans is unmatched. I remember the thrill of seeing my favorite team clinch a playoff win live a couple years ago. It's a memory that I'm never going to forget. This year, Game Time makes it easier to create those unforgettable memories with their new Game Time picks. It filters out the fluff and shows you only the best deals on great seats so you can focus on what matters, which is being there. I use Game Time picks to grab a couple tickets for a Tennessee basketball game a couple weeks ago. Could have been easier. I found the super deal. They gave me incredible value for these amazing seats. I could even preview and get a view from my spot before I purchased the ticket. The all-in pricing is a game changer. No surprise fees at checkout. Plus, knowing my tickets are backed by the Game Time guarantee gave me a complete peace of mind. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, put in the promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Create an account, put in the redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Can Tennessee football have one of the better special teams units in the country in 2025? I think so. Why? Well, you return your two specialists. Tennessee certainly is going to have to replace Matthew Solansky as the long snapper, the 4-year or 5-year starter at long snapper. But you return your specialists in Max Gilbert and place kicker, Jackson Ross at punter, Josh Turbeville as the kickoff man, and you return Boo Carter at punt returner, who I think can really be a difference maker for this Tennessee team and this Tennessee offense, setting them up with really, really good field position. So we'll start with Max Gilbert. How was Max Gilbert his first year on the job for Tennessee? Well, he did a pretty good job. He drilled 20 of 26 field goals, had a long of 52 yards. He booted 3 field goals that exceeded 50 yards, and Tennessee hadn't had a field goal kicker that drilled a 50-yard plus field goal since, I want to say, 2022. So it's been a couple of years. He only missed 1 field goal within 40 yards in distance. He went through a little bit of a stretch there, and Tennessee's offense was going through a stretch there as well where they were just so desperate for points. So I thought that they kind of put him out there a couple of times in bad situations, a couple of 50-yarders that he missed. But he did miss a couple, got in his head. I think he was 1 for 6 at one point in time, but then he finished the year drilling all the field goal attempts that he had opportunities for. So he did a really, really good job. Season high 4 field goals came against Mississippi State, where he showed a lot of excitement kind of coming out of that slump. He had 3 in wins over Oklahoma and NC State on the road. NC State was a neutral side, but it was away from Neyland Stadium. Perfect 54 for 54 on point after attempts. Special teams player of the week honors after the road win at Oklahoma. So Max Gilbert got a leg on him, and I think he's just going to continue to get better, accuracy, long distance, and all that. But you got a really, really good kicker here in Max Gilbert. Then you have the ambidextrous punter in Jackson Ross, former professional footballer in Australia, as tough as they come, a graduate of Pro Kick Academy, which has put tons and tons of kickers, more punters, in big-time college football in the United States, and there's a couple in the National Football League right now. He had a really, really good year coming into his second year in the program as a third year in the program, second year as the starting punter for Tennessee. 21 punts down inside the 20-yard line. Boom, 10 punts that had traveled 50 or more yards. 53 punts for 2,329 yards in 2024. Averaged 43.9 yards per boot, so 44 yards per boot. Also the holder on field goals and point after attempts for Tennessee's field goals and Max Gilbert. Jackson Ross, I keep waiting on the time and the place and the game and the year when they're going to run a fake. They will run a fake with him because he can throw it and he can run it. It's just all about being timely in that regard, and I think maybe that could happen in 2025. So there's opportunities there with Tennessee's punter, Jackson Ross, who did a really, really good job of pinning opposing offenses deep in its own territory and letting Tennessee's top 10 defense just get after it and go to work. Maybe the more underrated weapons that Tennessee has is this kickoff man, Josh Turbeville, Knoxville Catholic alum. Get this. Second in the SEC, third in FBS with 68 touchbacks. 82 of his kickoffs in 2024, 8 of his 82 kickoffs in 2024, 82% of them were good for touchbacks, which ranked among some of the best in the country. He was named a third-team All-SEC player by the league's coaches for his redshirt sophomore campaign. So Josh Turbeville, I mean, I think the ones where he kicked it out of bounds or he didn't get into the end zone, I think Tennessee was trying to squeeze it. I think Tennessee was trying to do something. In my opinion, you just let that sucker boot it through the end zone every single time. He's going to be all right. Tennessee has a weapon in a local standout from Knoxville Catholic and Josh Tuberville. So pretty good right now, right? Jackson Ross entering his third season as Tennessee's punter, ambidextrous, ability to do different things, kick with both legs, pin teams deep. The fake's always a threat there. You got Max Gilbert, who had a little bit of a mini slump as a redshirt freshman, but 20 of 26 overall, couple of 50-yard boots, long of 52, really, really good year. And then Josh Tuberville, who we just went over. Now let's go to the return specialist. Kickoff return, I'm not going to put a big emphasis on this because Tennessee doesn't put a big emphasis on this. They hardly ever return kicks. And you saw a couple of different guys back there, Peyton Lewis, Deshaun Bishop, Mike Matthews, Cam Selden earlier in the year. But Tennessee really just doesn't put a high regard on kickoff returns like they did when Velus Jones was here. Ever since Velus Jones left, Tennessee really doesn't try to return kickoffs. They'll just take the touchback, take the fair catch, and start at the 25. But punt return's a different story. And I understand not trying to overload him, not trying to put too much on him right out of the gate. But man, Boo Carter, like as a true freshman, it took him like 7 games to take over the punt return duties. He should have been doing it all year long. Fantastic. 16.5 yards per return on 12 returns in 2024. Long of 38 yards against UTEP. He returned a punt 35 yards against Kent State. Just a game changer. And again, I covered his high school career a couple of different times. We had him on TV and played running back, wide receiver. I mean, he's just a baller with the ball in his hands. And we'll see if they work him in at wide receiver at all for packaging plays and all that in 2025. But at minimum, he needs to be your starting star, and he needs to be returning punts for you every single game. And Tennessee's going to do that moving forward. Jerron McCoy, who, of course, has a torn ACL, going to be fighting to get back for the start of the season, but I'd say he'll be limited there at the very beginning. He returned a couple of punts this year, and he was good at it. I don't know why they had him back there. He's your best defensive back, but he was really good at it. 9.8 yards per return, 6 punts. He had a season-high 23-yard return against Kent State, took one 17 yards back against Florida. So I think Tennessee, because of what you bring back, because of the explosiveness, I think Tennessee can have a real competitive advantage on special teams. You just can't have penalties. You can't have silly mistakes. And in my opinion, boot it through the end zone every single time, and you're going to be in a good spot. So because of all this, I think Tennessee can have a top 3 special teams unit in all the country, at least from a specialist standpoint. And that can really, really help out on offense. It's still going to be trying to figure it out. Who's a wide receiver? Who's on the offensive line? What type of step is Nico making? And hopefully still feasting off what better be another top 10 defense. All right, when we come back, how is Tennessee going to seek revenge against the Florida Gators? And will Tennessee break out of its slump? Oh my goodness. Tennessee needs a win in the worst way. This is a must-win game for Tennessee. We'll preview it. We will discuss the keys on how that can happen, all that and more as we continue on here this Friday edition of Locked On Vols. All right, guys, we got a final segment left here of this Friday morning Locked On Vols. Appreciate you guys for being here, making Locked On Vols your first listen, your first watch each and every single morning. Boy, oh boy, Tennessee needs a win in the worst way. Yeah, I'm going to call it a must-win. You can't afford to drop back-to-back home games. You're already even in Southeastern Conference play at 4-4. 17-4 is the record. It's fine. Tennessee's still a virtual lock to make the big dance. I get all that. The sky is not falling, but man, if you want to take advantage of who you are and of what you have on this roster, and I know there's some deficiencies there, I get it, but you cannot drop back-to-back home games. You just can't. That is not in the cards here. And so what's it going to take for Tennessee to not only seek revenge against Florida in a game that they beat you by 30 back on January the 7th, but you just need another win to kind of right this ship, win at home before you go back on the road in the Southeastern Conference, because we know how challenging that can be in this conference. Before we get to kind of previewing what's to come, let's take a look back at what happened on January the 7th. Florida 73, Tennessee 43. The Gators shot only 39% from the field. They made only 6 of 23 pointers. They were okay at the charity stripe. They had 12 turnovers. They just shot the basketball. And just like in Tennessee's loss here against Florida and loss the other night against Kentucky, Tennessee just wasn't finding the bottom of the basketball, but of the net, I mean. You had 16 points off the bench from Aberdeen in that game for Florida, 18 from Martin, 12 from Alex Condon. got good bench production. They were efficient. You look at Tennessee and how it struggled, 21% from the field, 13% from three. At least Tennessee only took 29 three-point shot attempts in that game and not 45. 50, even from the charity shot, 15 of 25 from the free throw line. Just not good. You were 4 of 12 for Double Z, 3 of 16 from the field for Chaz, 1 of 11 for Jordan Gainey. Igor Milicic didn't even take that many shots. He was 2 of 7. Tennessee, I believe, lost a rebounding battle. Yeah, got just bullied in the boards. 56 rebounds for Florida to only 37 for Tennessee. Again, 12 turnovers for Tennessee, 12 turnovers for Florida. 10 points apiece from Chaz Lanier and Zakai Ziegler, but a lot of that, at least for Chaz, came from the charity stripe where he made three free throws. 7 points for Gainey, 8 points for Felix Okpara. Tennessee just cannot get bullied on the boards like it did in that first matchup. It can't shoot 21% from the field, and it absolutely can't go 13% from long range. So, again, I'm going to be intrigued to see kind of what this looks like. You look at ESPN's kind of stat line going in this game. Tennessee averages 75 points a game. Florida averages 85. Tennessee averages 59 points allowed. Florida averages giving up 65. Field goal percentage, 47% for Florida, 44% for Tennessee. Rebounds per game, this is the advantage, 44 for Florida, 38 for Tennessee. Pretty much even on the assist front. Pretty much even on the blocks per game. Almost even on steals, 8.4 for Florida, 7.8 for Tennessee. But Tennessee, of course, has lost 3 of the last 4. This has lost 2 straight. Florida, meanwhile, has won 3 straight. And it's playing some good basketball. You look at Florida, kind of what they do offensively, their overall stat sheet. They got 4 players who average double figures, led by Clayton Jr., putting up close to 18 points per game, 17.8. You got Martin that's at 16 points per game. You got Richard who's at 13 points per game. You got Condon who's at 10 points per game. Pretty efficient. They like to shoot some 3-pointers. Overall in the season, they're making 34% of them, which is not a high mark, but the Clayton and Martin shoot a ton of 3-pointers, 147 attempts and 137 attempts all told. But nonetheless, again, this is a game that Tennessee just has to have. Got to have it. It's a must-win in my opinion because you can't afford to have this slide when you allow Missouri to come to town. Missouri is a team that has beaten Florida already this year. You got to win these games at home because it's so challenging to win on the road. SEC losses, Florida overall in the season, ranked number 5 coming into the week, 18-2, 5-2 in SEC play. SEC losses for the Gators. They've lost, came up short in a shootout at Kentucky at Rupp Arena, 106-101. And then that Missouri shortcome that I just mentioned a moment ago, 83-82 against the Tigers. They came up a point short a couple of weeks ago. 4 players average double figures, 3-1 in true road games is Florida coming into this matchup. Key wins on the season. They beat Virginia. Of course, they beat Tennessee, and they also beat North Carolina. So they've got a couple of key quad 1 wins that look good on the resume. But overall, when you're looking at these quad 1 matchups, Tennessee's 5-4 in quad 1 games. Florida hadn't played as many games, 3-2 in quad 1 games. Quad 2 through 4 games, both of those are undefeated streaks. Tennessee 12-0, and you have Florida that is 15-0. KenPom likes Tennessee slightly in this game. KenPom has the Volunteers winning by 3 points, a 60% chance of victory inside the Food City Center. 71-68 is the predicted outcome per KenPom. ESPN's matchup predictor gives Tennessee a 69.3% chance, so ESPN likes Tennessee to win a little bit more than that of KenPom, 69.3% to 60%. Again, another really, really effective offensive basketball team. Florida, offensive efficiency rating, number 3 in the country. Tennessee did score 70 points the other night, so it didn't drop that much, went to 35. Defensive efficiency, not bad for Florida. Tennessee's ranked number 2 in the country. Florida's 16. That's not bad again. And Tennessee, it still is ranked higher than Florida in the net, ranked 4th, while Florida's 5th. Tennessee is behind Florida in the KenPom rankings. Tennessee 6, Florida 4. So, again, same story, right? Same as the first meeting, same against Kentucky, same against Auburn. It's a really, really good offensive team going up against a pretty good defensive team. And Tennessee's defense failed them there towards the end of the game against Kentucky. Whereas, Kentucky tried so much to allow Tennessee to get back in this ball game. A Tennessee foul put him at the free throw line a couple of different times, and Tennessee's offense, though it wasn't great, 45 3-point shot attempts was not great. There was no mid range. Couldn't get to the rim. I mean, sure, the offense was not great, and that's the reason you lost. But there were some stops and some key fouls late in that game against Kentucky that allowed Kentucky to kind of squeak out this win there. And I know there was some questionable officiating in that game as well. But Tennessee's defense has got to be what Tennessee's defense is, night in and night out. It's got to be better, and Tennessee needs this win in the worst way. So what's it going to look like? Well, 12 o'clock on Saturday, we'll find out. At least that's when the start. 2 o'clock, we'll probably have a final buzzer score, and so I'm intrigued to see how Tennessee bounces back, and hopefully we got a much better conversation talking about Tennessee basketball on Monday's show. If not, well, we'll get through it together. Appreciate you guys, as always, for tuning in. Make them Locked On Vols your first listen, your first watch each and every single morning. Can't thank you enough for being a part of the show. Tell that Tennessee friend in your life, maybe it's a family member, maybe it's a coworker, big Tennessee fans, this is the show for you. Free and available wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Please download the episode, subscribe to the channel, and on YouTube. And we'll do it again on Monday, everybody. This is Locked On Vols.